Toronto. Thank you guys so much for reaching out to the Toronto Public Library. My name is Amelia Harkins, and I am a community librarian here at TPL. In my free time, however, when I take my librarian hat off, I am a self-proclaimed crazy crafter. So, welcome everyone to my crafting corner. If you're curious, my main loyalties lie with knitting, as you can see from my embarrassing yarn hoard. I'm a knitter through and through. However, I just took on the daunting project of starting my first quilt, which is coming along here. You can see a bit of my progress. Please, if you're a pro quilter, help a girl out. And I've also dabbled in scrapbooking and embroidery. So, in combination with my library sleuthing skills, I like to think that I'm a pretty trustworthy source for creating the perfect crafting leisure reads list. I know better than anyone that us crafters are passionate people. I like to use the word passionate, but my boyfriend and friends might use the word obsessive. But non-crafters just don't get it. They really don't understand how our emotional stress just slowly slips away with every stitch, snip, or loop. I understand that comfort, and I seek it every time that I pick up my needles or my fabric. I also seek it when I pick up a book. All the books that I've selected for you guys will give you that familiar, warm and cozy feeling that you get when starting a new crafting project. Or when you give your loved ones a quilt or knitted blanket that you've been working on for months. I've made a list of 10 books where I think at least a couple, if not more, can apply to everyone who considers themselves a crafter. Most of the novels include crafting storylines and have quite light-hearted reading experiences. Some examples include knitting, scrapbooking, quilting, and embroidery, but a couple of them don't. Some of the stories just make you want to curl up by the fire with a nice warm cup of tea, which always reminds me of the feeling I get when crafting. Trust me though, you won't see any of those cheesy murder mystery crafting novels on the book list. No shame though, I love those sometimes too. I just wanted to make this book list a little bit more meaty and less predictable, per se. I also included some nonfiction titles written by crafters or creative-minded people about crafting and creativity, which really give an authentic and validating perspective for any crafter to relate to. I made the executive decision, however, not to include instructional crafting book recommendations. Firstly, because I know you guys are all professional crafters who probably already know the ins and outs of how-to books. And secondly, because the scope of this book list is much too small to go into any proper depth there. But if you guys would like me to create another book list of instructional crafting books, please don't hesitate to ask. Alright, so the first book on the list is called The Scrapbook of Frankie Pratt, a novel in pictures. Alright. So, this book provides an incredibly unique reading experience. It is a coming-of-age story of a young woman named Frankie growing up in the 1920s who decides to scrapbook one page a day. And that is actually how her story is told. The narration or text is told through cutouts of typewritten pages alongside pasted all types of vintage memorabilia ranging anywhere from ticket stubs, drawings, photographs, report cards, letters, newspaper clippings, and even candy wrappers and weird stuff like that sometimes. When looking at the pages, which I'll show you in a minute, it might seem a little hard to follow, but it still reads very much like any other story in terms of plot, character, and setting. I find that the setting actually of this novel to be extremely convincing due to the visuals used to help tell the story and really set the scene. It kind of really transports you back to the 1920s. Of course, scrapbookers would love this novel for all the amazing vintage inspo that it gives, but I think that all crafters, due to our really visual nature, could sit down and appreciate just the beauty of this book and also the really incredible story of Frankie. So here's more of an up-close look at what I mean by just the incredible visuals of this novel. So you can see the typewritten narrative. This is where all the text is portrayed. And then you can see all of the pasted in pictures, playing cards, different kind of scrapbooking looks to it that are just have the vintage feel to it. Yeah, so it's just a really beautiful book that kind of really appeals to the visual nature of crafters. Alright, so the second book that I chose is titled In the Company of Women, Inspiration and Advice from Over 100 Makers, Artists, and Entrepreneurs. So this is what the book looks like, and I'll show you a bit more in a minute or so. This book might not be the book for all crafters, but secretly I think that more crafters should read this book. It's a feel-good, wildly inspirational compilation of success stories of women who once considered themselves mere hobbyists, but turned their hobbies into prosperous careers. If you need a push to hear and understand the words, you're not just a sewer, you're a designer. You're not just a quilter, you're an artist. You're not just a crafter, you're an entrepreneur. You should read this book. If you're constantly saying to yourself, oh, this is just a fun little hobby to fill my free time, it'll never make me any money if I try and sell it, you should really read this book. If you enjoy real life stories of incredible women that are almost too relatable at some points, you will really love this book. Alright, so this is In the Company of Women by Grace Bonney, which is honestly another really visually stunning book. But here are just a few examples of the inspirational stories of hobbyists gone professionals, which is, the first one is Maya and Teti Giorgiani, and sorry, I use scrap fabric as bookmarks sometimes, but these two women were just sewers by hobby, and they turned that hobby into a professional business by becoming fashion designers. Another interesting example is of Michelle Kwan, who is a ceramicist from Brooklyn, New York, who just liked doing pottery as a hobby and found that her skill was very unique and decided to prosper off of that skill and turn it into a very successful business. Another example is Hoppy and Lily Stockman, who are textile designers. They have a joint business together, which is very relevant to quilting, in my opinion. You kind of have to have that visual eye for colors going together, different patterns going together. So that's another example of how a crafting hobby can turn into a really successful business. Alright, so the next book that I'm going to be telling you guys about is called The Lost Quilter. And it is a novel that combines historical fiction, African American literature, fugitive slave narratives, and quilting. How, you ask? Well, through an incredibly touching and inspiring tale of two quilters living in two different centuries whose lives cross paths through one incredible quilt. Master quilter Sylvia is mesmerized and enchanted by an antique quilt she finds somewhere on the farm that she grew up in. Upon researching and asking around, Sylvia finds out that the quilt was created by a fugitive slave named Joanna living on the farm as a place of refuge during the 1860s. Despite Joanna being tragically recaptured by slaves, Sylvia does everything in her power to revive Joanna's memory through reading about her life in her ancestors' journals. Through the incredible beauty of Joanna's quilt, her artistic legacy and life lives on through Sylvia. This book is equally heartwarming and heart-wrenching, so it's a bit of a heavier read compared to most of the others, but the inspirationally strong characters with their common passion for quilting helps to overcome the tragedy of Joanna's life and helps her legacy live on. Alright, so those are the three books that I wanted to dive a bit deeper into, and I hope that those three give you guys a little bit of a taste of the books that I selected for you. But if nothing yet has struck your fancy, I still really encourage you to check out the official book list to read a bit more in depth about the other titles. If you guys are interested in other books on the reading list, I'm going to list them off to you now. So first up we have Unraveled by Robin Harding, and The Curse of the Boyfriend Sweater, Essays on Crafting by Alana Okun, Gathering Blue by Lois Lowry, The Tao of Martha by Jen Lancaster, Knitting for Good by Betsy Greer, The Persian Pickle Club by Sandra Dallas, and last but not least, The Awakening of Miss Prim by Natalia San Martin Fanarella. All of these books are available at Toronto Public Library for you guys to check out. Also, don't forget to check out the reading list to learn more about these titles. Alright, so I hope that everyone can find something that speaks to them or inspires them in this list. A lot of these titles are personal recommendations that in my times of need provided me comfort or I found relatable as a crafter. Each of these books provided me with the same warm and cozy feeling that crafting always brings to me, and I'm sure you guys all are familiar with as well. Alright, so thank you again, Crafters Guild of Toronto, for reaching out, and please feel free to stop by Toronto Public Library, ask for Amelia at the desk to check out or place holds on any of these items. I'd also love to chat with any of you guys about our crafting obsession, as some might call it. Alright, so now I've got some knitting to get back to, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Please feel free to reach out.